Welcome back, everybody. We are going over to Tobago to talk about their budget, which will be presented on June 24th. Joining us via Skype, Venus Stream's economist. Good morning, Mr. James.
Morning.
Mr. James, so on Monday, June 24th, the budget will be read in the Tobago House of Assembly. What are your expectations?
From the perspective of what is in the best interests of the people of Tobago, little or none.
None. Why?
The government promised 2 or so years ago and took to the House in Trinidad a bill to provide for internal self-government, to allow the people of Tobago to marshal adequate resources to initiate a large-scale process of self-determination economically and politically. 20th of May was promised as the deadline for that bill to be taken back to the House. None of it was done. In the absence of profound changes in the governance arrangements in Tobago, little or nothing will come of any kind of budgeting that is done. None has come over the last 20 years, despite the fact that we won the funds under the Dispute Resolution Commission. And none will come in the next 100 years until we change the system of government we have here in Tobago.
Why do you think the system hasn't been changed?
Well, there are two reasons. One is, of course, the disingenuous tendencies of these governments generally across the Caribbean, not just the one here in Trinidad and Tobago, where they are all in love with executive power rather than the representative and legislative control of executive behavior. That's on the one hand. So the politicians really don't behave as if they have any incentive to push the kinds of changes we need for them to know the will of the people and obey it. That's on the one hand. But on the other hand, the dominance of government, especially here in Tobago, where the Executive Council dominates all spheres of life, given our history, the history we were just talking to Kamban about there, the people are fearful of government in general, and they're fearful of challenging government. And so they don't put enough pressure on their governments to initiate the changes that would put them in control of executive action. And with that combination, unless we find a basket of political leaders who could come back to that issue and push for change and bring the people out to rally for the kinds of changes that we need, we won't get it. Governments could then do what they've done. This last government has done, this is the PNM, make the promise, make a big deal of the promise, and then do nothing about it.
So you said that you expect nothing.
Let me say, the THA here in Tobago doesn't need the central government to initiate good governance processes. You could see for yourself the Sandals fiasco, what's going on with the airport now, and this business of bringing a medium-term policy framework that an expert from Port of Spain has written for us, as if they can simply come and instruct the people of Tobago on how to develop. That kind of behavior promises us nothing good in any budgeting that is going to be done.
Yeah, but what would you like to see? If you had to say you want to see focus on a certain sector, what do you want to see for Tobago?
The first priority in the budget must be to fund good governance. That's the first thing. Public education programs that allow the people to learn what it takes to control and run their country, to own, control, and run their country. That's priority number one. That is the biggest economic investment that has to take place in Tobago, and may I say in Trinidad and the rest of the Caribbean. That's the first point. But against that background, we have the science that tells us how the nation should develop. Trinidad and Tobago will not develop based on oil and gas. We've now discovered that. It will develop based on projects and large-scale projects that invest in the development of the capacity to produce what I call, and what economists call capital, produce human capital, education for export, not for local consumption alone. So that's what we had in mind in 1997 when we proposed the second university for the country that eventually came as UTT. But UTT is focused on educating Trinidad and Tobagonians.
Right.
If you look at what Grenada is doing with the University of St. George's, they're educating both Grenadians and foreigners. If you look at what Britain is doing with Cambridge and Oxford and Manchester and so on, they're educating both British people and foreigners. Yeah. Same in Australia. Same in the US with Harvard and New York University and so on. That's how you do development.
I would like to thank you for joining us this morning, sharing your thoughts and expectations, or lack thereof, in the THA budget, which is being presented on Monday, the 24th of June. Thank you very much for joining us. Yeah,
well, you know, everyone will have expectations, and it will be good to see how it plays out on June 24th. And right now we toss to Dion.